So, good morning, man. A small group. Everybody's on vacation. Everybody's traveling. Let's go ahead and pray, and then we'll start. Lord, thank you so much just for this opportunity. Thank you for this time that we have together. Pray, God, that this would be beneficial and that this would be instructive as we continue to walk through the introduction to Daniel chapter 10 and what this all means and why it's important for us to know. Again, thank you so much for who you are and for your word which you have given to us. It's in your son's name. Amen. Okay, let's go ahead and kick this off. Let me go ahead and do this here. All right, let me go ahead and kick this off with what we talked about from last week. We've been going through Daniel chapter 10, of course, and we didn't really get very far. Basically, Daniel is, again, detailing a vision that he has observed, that he has seen. And it's getting ready to be disclosed to him. But before we actually get to the overall vision, he's telling us some details that basically surrounded details that surrounded him before the vision was given to him. He gives a specific time marker, particularly in Daniel chapter 10, verses 1 and following, which is important. He seems to start off all of his chapters this way and tells us that in the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a message was given to him. We have been looking at kind of Daniel's timeline, and now we have rewound or went back to essentially the time of Cyrus the Great. Remember, in chapter 8, we were at the start, essentially, of Ahasuerus' reign, and Daniel was kind of on his way out. Now, in this chapter, we've gone back in time to Cyrus. If we kind of zoom in to Cyrus's reign, we've been looking at Cyrus begins his reign over the Persian Empire in 559 BC. He conquers Babylon in 539, around the time that Daniel is there, serving under the Babylonian rulership there, and installs Darius the Mede as the co-regent in the city of Babylon, with Cyrus, of course, being the chief ruler. So in the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia, again, it's not the beginning of Cyrus's reign. It is the beginning of it's the third year of Cyrus's reign of Babylon, where Daniel is. At this time, too, Daniel is no longer a part of the royal court, right? Because he worked under he was an attendee of Nebuchadnezzar and those who kind of followed him. But since there is a new rulership, there's new authority, new rulers, right? And so he is his time under the rulership is essentially over, although he experiences varying success throughout the time of Cyrus's reign. Okay, let's go ahead and continue in Daniel chapter 10, verses 4 and 5. So on the 24th day of the first month, while I was at the bank of the great river, that is the Tigris, I lifted my eyes and looked, and behold, there was a certain man dressed in linen, whose waist was girded with a belt of pure gold from Uphaz. His body was also like beryl. His face had an appearance of lightning. His eyes were like flaming torches. His arms were like a gleam of polished bronze, and the sound of his words like the sound of the tumult. I want to do something right quick that's kind of interesting. I want to go to the end of this here, the end of this text. Let's go ahead and look at verse 9. Actually, I'll start at verse 8. So I was left alone and saw this great vision, yet no strength was left in me, for my natural color had turned a deathly pallor, and I retained no strength. But I heard the sound of his words, and as soon as I heard the sound of his words, I fell into a deep sleep on my face, with my face to the ground. I will underscore this again when we get to the end of it. The point is here is that Daniel obviously was very shaken, more than very shaken, literally scared to death, okay? Because of this great vision that he had seen. Well, if we started off the text with this, the question would be, what in the world caused him to observe this vision, to be scared to death of it? It is where we get these details here. That Daniel lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, that word hene, behold, means to focus on the details of what he is getting ready to describe here in verses 4 and 5. This takes place on the 24th day of the first month while he was on the bank of the great river, that is the Tigris. So he gives us a specific time that this vision occurred to him. The specific location he mentions is the Tigris. Now, that doesn't look like Tigris, right? Look at that word. Kadachel is the phrase here. 2 times it occurs in the Hebrew scriptures. It occurs here in the book of Daniel, of course. And actually the word translates rapid. That's as a quick flowing river. This river flows quick. It flows vigorously. This is usually translated as the Tigris River. Now, where's the other occurrence? If it only occurs twice in the entire Hebrew text. One time it occurs here. The other time it occurs all the way in Genesis 2. When it talks about the creation and how God created the heavens and the earth, we read the following here. Now a river flowed out of Eden to water the garden, and from there it divided and became 4. The name of the first is the Pishon. It flows around the whole land of Havilah. Where there is gold, that land is good. The bdellium and the onyx stone are there. The name of the second river is Gihon, and it flows around the whole land of Cush. And the third river is the Tigris, and it flows east of Assyria. And the fourth river is the Euphrates. So this rapid river, this quick river, again, this is kind of the area where Daniel was during around this time here, where he saw this vision. So he gives us the specific time of this vision, the 24th day of the first month, and he gives us the location. This is pretty important because, again, this sets up the fact that Daniel didn't just have this wasn't figment. This wasn't a figment of his imagination. This was something that he understood to be very, very important. And so he has all of these markers, right? The markers of the ruler that he's under, the markers of the location and the time that this took place, the marker of the area or the location where he's at, right? Again, going through great pains to give us all this. So, on the 24th day of the first month, while I was at the bank of the Tigris, hanging out, I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, there was a certain man dressed in linen, whose waist was girded with a belt of pure gold of Uphaz. Again, his body was like beryl, his face had the appearance of lightning, his eyes were like flaming torches, and his arms were like a gleam of polished bronze, and the sound of his words were like the sound of a tumult. So after Daniel himself, literally, Daniel himself used the word ra'ah. That word is looked here in the Hebrew text. This is more than just looking, right? This is looking and observing and examining these things, which is why he's able to give us all of this detail. Because He is fixed. His gaze is fixed on all this. And behold, again, the word hene, to get the reader to focus on the preceding details. Hey, pay attention here. I got some details for you. This is crazy, y'all. I'm about to lay this out for you. Then he begins to give, again, the specific details of what he saw concerning this one man. That word certain is ephod. That is a number. This one man. Okay. So let's take a look at the details of this one man. He gives, first of all, the external clothing. He kind of works outward, inward. First, easy, dressed in linen. Not too much detail there. Okay. Dressed in linen, a robe of some sort. But we also have other details that he gives as well. For instance, he mentions that he's dressed in linen in verse 5, and his waist was girded with a belt of pure gold of Uphaz. What in the world is that? Well, let's look at this word Uphaz. Uphaz occurs 2 times in the Hebrew scriptures. One time again in the book of Daniel. Uphaz was a region or a location in the ancient world that was known for its abundance of gold. Okay? And pure gold at that. I mean, it's about as pure as it can get. Okay? And so, but the location of this region is unknown. We have no idea where this region is archaeologically in our modern era. Again, the word only occurs twice in the Hebrew scriptures. One time it occurs here. The other occurrence is found in Jeremiah 10, which again, the gold of Uphaz is also brought up here. It says, beaten silver is brought from Tarshish, and gold from Uphaz, the work of a craftsman in the hands of a goldsmith. Violet and purple are their clothing, and they and all the work of skilled men. So, Daniel, again, giving us details concerning not just the linen or the clothing that this one man wore, but also the attire, the gold sash, and where this gold is from. He doesn't say it was like the gold of Uphaz. He says that he was girded with pure gold. That's important. Okay. Okay. Let's continue here. Going back to Daniel chapter 10, verses 4 and 5 here. It says his body was like beryl. His face had the appearance of lightning. His eyes were like flaming torches. His arms were like a gleam of polished bronze. And the sound of his words like the sound of the tumult here. Now, after he has described his external attire, he begins to talk about the physical appearance concerning this one man, or that is the certain man that he saw. Let's take a look at some of the details here. It says his body was like beryl. This word beryl occurs 7 times in the Hebrew scriptures. The Hebrew word for this is Tarshish. This word occurs 1 time in the book of Daniel, and that's here in chapter 10. This particular word, Tarshish, within this context refers to a precious stone, a precious gem of some type. Okay. And as I was doing some research on this, essentially there's all types of stones that have a particular color. Like there's a beryl that's like blue. There's one that's like orangish type shape. In this context, it's more of a yellowish jasper type color of beryl. It kind of looks like this. It's very pretty. So was he walking around like a stone like this? Well, no, not exactly. That his body, in terms of how Daniel was describing it, was more like a resplendent, glowing body. That's kind of the idea. It speaks to the resplendent nature of his body. His body is almost like radiating. That's kind of the idea. Right? But we have more details here. So his body was resplendent and kind of radiating this brightness, and this brightness was like the yellowish stone of jasper or beryl. It says his face had the appearance of lightning. That's interesting. Barak is the Hebrew word here. 21 times it occurs in the Hebrew scriptures. Only one time here it's located here. It's like lightning or lightning flashes. That's kind of the idea. AI is kind of fun. So I actually typed in, I said, give me a head that has lightning, and this kind of popped up. I don't think it was that. Okay? Basically, it speaks to the certain man that Daniel saw, or the one man that Daniel saw, speaks to the brilliance of his face. That, lightning flashes, right? Some of them are really bright. They're almost so bright, they light up the sky. It's kind of like that. His face was so brilliant. Okay? That's kind of the idea here. So his body was radiating with this resplendent light, right? That Daniel defines as beryl, as a jasper, yellow jasper stone, and his face was brilliant. Okay? Okay? That's kind of the idea. Again, Daniel continues to give the details here in verse 6. It says his body was also like beryl, his face had the appearance of lightning, his eyes were like flaming torches. That's kind of interesting. The flaming, really like fire torches. That is the literal word here, like fire torches. So not only was his face brilliant, but the eyes were distinguished from the face in that they looked like there was a blaze, like his eyes were ablaze, right? Now remember, let's go back to verses 8 and 9. You could see why he's scared to death of this particular certain man, right? This resplendent person who's coming with this glowing, radiating body, with this brilliant face and these eyes that seem to be like flames, like fire. We always, it always is a wonder to me, individuals who say that they want to see angels, or I saw angels and they're it was so wonderful, so great, they had wings. I don't think that and it was so good I cried. I don't think that I would do that. At least Daniel's not. Daniel's kind of looking and going, ah. Polished bronze. Let's talk about this. His arms and his feet like the gleam of polished bronze. The word for polished is qualal. Okay, nashet. This Hebrew word occurs 2 times in the Hebrew scriptures, 1 time in the book of Daniel. Again, it's either burnished or polished, right? And this word is used as an adjective or descriptor of this particular feature. Bronze is nekosheth. Okay? This word occurs 140 times in the Hebrew scriptures and only one time here, and it is translated as bronze or brass, something that is made out of metal, essentially. Okay? So we've got burnished bronze or polished bronze, polished brass, something like that. Again, kind of putting this all together, his resplendent body, his brilliant face, his eyes ablaze like fire, and his arms and his legs are like that of the shine of bronze or polished brass. Something like that. Let's keep it moving here. How about his voice? This is kind of interesting too. So he goes, I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, there was a certain man dressed in linen, whose waist was girded with the belt of pure gold of Uphaz. His body was like beryl, again, resplendent. His face like the appearance of lightning, brilliant. His eyes were like flaming torches or fire torches. His arms and feet like the gleam of polished bronze or brass. And the sound of his words. Now, what's interesting is we haven't really heard any words from this person yet, right? From this one man. But Daniel gives us some detail about his voice ahead of time. That his voice is like the sound of a tumult. Hamon is the Hebrew word for this particular word that's translated tumult. It occurs 83 times in the Hebrew scriptures. It occurs 6 times in the book of Daniel. Okay. Now, I don't really like this word tumult. I'll tell you why in a minute. We'll talk about it in a second. In Jeremiah chapter 11, verses 10 to 11, we see the same word here, hamon. It is translated as multitude. It says, his sons will mobilize and assemble a multitude of great forces, and one of them will keep on coming and overflow and pass through, that he may again wage war up to his very fortress. The king of the south will be enraged and go forth and fight the king of the north. The latter will rise a great multitude, but the multitude will be given into the hand of the former. Again, talking about 2 specific groups, right? Concerning a multitude of individuals. In Daniel chapter 11, verses 12 to 13, we see the same thing again. When the multitude is carried away, his heart will be lifted up, and he will cause tens and thousands to fall, yet will not prevail. For the king of the north again will raise a greater multitude than the former. And after an interval of some years, he will press on with a great army and with much equipment. I believe that this word tumult actually should be translated multitude. He was speaking in it was one man who had one voice, but that one voice sounded like many voices when he spoke. So it was like his voice was like the sound of a multitude of individuals. So even though we have not heard, or at least heard some of the statements of this one man, this certain man that Daniel is in front of, the sound, of course, is too much to bear almost. Okay? Again, this refers to the strength and the power of this one man's voice. So think about all of this. Let's look at all these details here. Would you be scared if you saw this? I would be scared if I saw this. I'd be scared if I heard it, right? And yet Daniel gets the opportunity to see this one man in unrestricted, right? In his brilliance, in his power, and gets to hear this one man speak. Now, I would like to point out something here. Notice the language here. Okay. Remember how I said that it doesn't say that a certain man or that one man dressed in linen whose waist was girded with the belt of gold of Uphaz? There is no comparative language within that statement. But we find within this statement a whole lot of likes, right? The comparison of one thing to another. His body also like beryl, not his body was beryl, but like it, similar to it. His face had the appearance of lightning. His eyes were like flaming torches. His arms and feet like the gleam of tarnished bronze. And the sound of his words like the sound of a multitude, right? Again, his qualities, this one man's qualities, this certain man's qualities are so otherworldly. So otherworldly. He's using kind of earthly examples to give a picture of what he saw concerning the physical qualities of this one man. That's very important. Because again, how would he describe something like this? To where the reader can understand what he was observing. You know? Again, all of these details, to wrap them up into a big bow, speak of the power and the glory of this certain man. This is not just, again, this is not a figment of his imagination. This is not a human being. This is not a human being who appears before him. Again, in one way, this speaks to highly emphasize the credibility and the authenticity of the message. As a matter of fact, just to parallel this, we see this all the way in Revelation. Turn with me to Revelation. By the way, this is a shameless plug, shameful plug, something like that. I don't know. I talked to Will this week, and I've decided to start working on the commentary for Revelation. I do not know what good it will do since we have thousands of them, but we'll just add that to the ether. So hopefully, book 1 will be out probably by the end of this year, maybe. No, well, but I'll just give you a copy. I don't know if it'll be signed or not. Let's if we look at some of the details here before John gives the details of Revelation, we see somewhat of a similar thing that happens here. Now, this is Jesus, of course, in his glorified state, but I want to take a look at some of the details here. Verse 12 of chapter 1 of Revelation. He says, "Then I turned to see the voice that was speaking with me. And having turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands. And in the middle of the lampstands, I saw one like a son of man, clothed in a robe." Remember that phrase, son of man, is very important. That is an idiom referring to a human being. We saw this in Daniel, actually. "Clothed in a robe reaching to the feet, and girded across his chest with a golden sash. His head and his hair were white like white wool, like snow. His eyes were like a flame of fire, and his feet were like burnished bronze, when it was made to glow in a furnace. And his voice was like the sound of many waters. In his right hand he held 7 stars, and in his mouth came a sharp two-edged sword, and his face was like the sun shining in its strength. Again, I find the parallels to be rather fascinating here. That before the details of the message are given, there's always this grandiose appearance, right? This otherworldly appearance. And I believe that that lends credibility to the message that is going to be laid out. Okay? We see something very similar too in the book of Ezekiel. We won't turn there, but it's very similar, typically in chapter 1. So these particular details that Daniel is giving are very important. But there's another detail too that's kind of interesting as well, and that is Daniel 10:7. He says this, "Now I, Daniel alone, saw the vision, while the men who were with me did not see the vision. Nevertheless, great dread fell on them, and they ran away to hide themselves." This is incredible here, because Daniel sees this person right in front of him. Okay? I mean, he's unrestricted. This tells us that Daniel had more people with him. Now, we do not know the number of people that were with him, right? But nevertheless, he was there with a company of individuals. And this being's presence was so powerful that this being's presence bent reality itself to the point where even when the people who were with him, they didn't see him, but they knew that something was up, so much that they feared for their life and they ran. Again, Daniel emphasizing had observed this one man. It was Daniel who saw the vision, but the men who accompanied him did not see the one man, but it appeared that they were aware that something was there and exceeding dread. I mean, they just took off. Didn't ask if he needed any help. Didn't ask if he wanted him to hang. They just took off. They just ran. Again, this speaks to the nature and the power of this certain man who was here. Now, Daniel, I think he wanted to run, but I think he was frozen in place. I think he was absolutely terrified, which we read in verse 8. This brings us to where we are here. "So I was left alone and saw this great vision, yet no strength was left in me. For my natural color turned to a deathly pallor, and I retained no strength." No strength was left in him, not because that certain man took it away, but because he was absolutely terrified. Natural color is the Hebrew word hodeh. This Hebrew word occurs 24 times in the Hebrew scriptures, 2 times in the book of Daniel. Now it's interesting, this phrase is translated natural color, but it actually means splendor, majesty, honor. When a person is majestic, or they have tons of esteem or something like that, there is a certain countenance that they have, a strong and lofty appearance, right? This word can also be translated vigor. So that the strength that Daniel had, right, was just wiped from him. And instead we get deadly pallor. Makshith is the Hebrew phrase. 11 times it occurs in the Hebrew scriptures, 2 times in the book of Daniel. The root word, shachaf, means to destroy or corrupt. So you can say he had lots of vigor before this, but was destroyed after this. Again, this word in this context is used to describe his appearance in comparison to his strong or vigorous appearance. All of the strength that he had was taken from him. He was absolutely terrified. Terrified. We can also translate this word, just to be more clear, ruined. His vigor was ruined. So I was left alone, and there was no strength left in me, for my vigor was turned to a ruin, essentially, and I retained no strength. What type of being could actually bend reality like that, to where individuals who can't see him sense that he's there and they run? And Daniel, who has unrestricted sight and sound to this being, is he fell to his feet as if dead. That's the idea. Daniel mentioned that since the men who were with him went into hiding, he was left by himself. Deuces. I know if that was me, I'd be gone. Dan, you're on your own, brother. Good luck, right? But due to the sight and sound of this one man, Daniel's physical strength left him, and he literally became scared to death. He probably thought that he was probably going to die. He does not know at this point what this being wants, why he's here, right? We're walking through the text. We kind of know what the message is. He's telling us kind of after this particular experience. It's not like he got a message from this one man. Hey, I'm going to show up at the Tigris River here, just be ready. You know what I'm saying? This one man just showed up, right? And Daniel does not have any clue as to why he is here and what he wants at this point. This is very important. We cannot skip these details. I know that, we like to get to the juicy stuff, right? Where's the action? Well, this is action. Daniel is going through great pains to underscore the fact that this is not just his imagination, that this wasn't just some type of fever dream that he had, right? That he's not high off of some substance, right? That Daniel is going through great pains to give us the ruler who he's under, the time that he's under, the location of where this happened, and even the details down to the sash on this certain man's waist, giving us comparative language to describe what he's seeing in relation to what he's observing. He's trying to give us these otherworldly details, and even gives us the response of the people who were with him that did not see this man, but left due to the fact that this being that shows up was able to bend reality in such a way that they could just leave and flee. These details matter, and they lend to the credibility and the validity of the message, the great message, the one of great conflict. When you're giving a message like that, according to God, you want to show up in this manner. It seems the case. Daniel, once more, giving the reader details concerning this one man that he saw, that the glory and power that he arrived in, and the response of him and the others who are around him, this once more again establishes credibility that the message he was to receive was from God himself. That is important. Okay. With that being said, we've talked about the time. We've established who this individual is. This individual will begin to start to speak to Daniel and tell him the intentions of why he is here before him in the first place. And we will examine that in, not next week, because I'll be gone next week. Yeah. Anniversary, brother.
Oh, right.
Yeah. But the week after. Let's go ahead and pray, and then I will let you guys go. Lord, thank you so much for these details. You know, Daniel could have just listed out the message that was given by this certain man, but he included these details because these details matter. They matter. They add to the validity and credibility of this historical account and of the message that was given to him with this one man. I pray, God, that we would not skip over details like this, but wonder and ponder these things. That Daniel is standing right before a divine messenger and is given us his response in real time at that time. That he's not anticipating or excited about this, but he is absolutely scared to death of this being. Thank you again so much for just the honesty, the response, and again, what we have learned concerning this one man. For it's in your son's name. Amen.